So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us to this month's Digging In with TPS-MTSU. We're really excited to have you join us today. So a couple things as we get started. First off, just a couple of our reminders for those of you who are joining us live. Of course, please do keep your mics muted so we can have a clear audio for the recording. Be sure that you have renamed yourself so we see your first and last names. And as always, we like for these to be as interactive as possible. So feel free to open up the chat box, introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining from today. And then feel free to ask questions, make comments. Throughout the presentation, we will be monitoring the chat box and interacting with you there throughout the course of the presentation. So also feel free to use your reaction buttons, and occasionally we also use polling that can, for those of you joining us live. So quick reminder that with this Digging In series, of course, we do have a Padlet page where you can find all of the resources and materials mentioned both in today's presentation as well as for all of the sessions within this monthly series. So that Padlet page, again, now has got a lot of great resources. I was just kind of looking back through it this morning, and it really is amazing in the wealth of information that's there. So please do take advantage of that and feel free to use that. So for today, a couple of things. First off, that'll be a little different. One, my partner in crime with these, Dr. Stacey Graham, is not with me today. She is at a conference in the UK, and so couldn't join us for this month. In her place, I have got Dr. Colby Lane Hogan, who will be joining me today, and we'll be sharing information about our World War II Home Front in Tennessee curriculum. And of course, our theme for this month is World War II. So if you haven't already had a chance to check out our Padlet in order to see the newsletter for this month, I encourage you to do so. So a little bit about our theme. So when we were thinking about what we wanted to do for this month, we knew that we were nearing the end of the project for our World War II Home Front in Tennessee curriculum. I knew that we would be debuting that to you all this month. And so we thought that this would be a great time to actually reflect on World War II at large and some of the resources that are available, because honestly, it's not a topic that we have done a tremendous amount of work on, usually because we feel like a lot of other people have done things, that there's a lot of cool resources out there. But so we haven't touched on it, a lot in the course of our TPS program. We did do one newsletter back in November of 2018 that we also did, I think, right around the time we did a workshop actually in partnership with the Gore Center on World War II. Around that time. And so we do, of course, link to that there in the newsletter. And we also, of course, share our awesome source of the month. And this is a postcard available actually from the Albert Gore Research Center. If you're not familiar with their collections, they have some amazing World War II stuff. And again, specifically focused on kind of Tennessee's World War II story, which I know Colby had a chance to view a lot of that when we were working on the curriculum project. And you'll see, so you get to see some of that featured in that curriculum, but know that, of course, they have a lot of great materials and good resources as well. Also, another thing that we link here that Stacey found was there's a really cool YouTube song list of pop music from the 1940s. So again, if you're trying to get your kids in the mindset of what people were listening to at the time period, this is a really cool resource that she found. Now, of course, you'll see our feature this month was a kind of a summary introduction to the curriculum that is now available that you'll hear more about here shortly. And you'll see, of course, some of the great resources that we link to, including a couple of lesson plans that we have done in the past, one of which Colby did for us a few years ago on the creation of a secret city. And so looking at Oak Ridge and its role in the Manhattan Project. This is one of two that she has done on that topic for us. We also, of course, feature a lesson plan here on oral histories and historic memory, looking at some of the soldiers' experiences during World War II that uses both Library of Congress materials as well as some Gore Center materials as well. And so that's a really good lesson plan to take a look at. There are two really interesting research guides that the library has. We included one for World War II, one for Great Depression and New Deal. And we like to, weave in the New Deal when we talk about World War II, because of course the New Deal is really important in kind of laying a foundation for a lot of the war efforts that prepared us for, what would happen during those years. Another really cool resource, if you're not familiar with it, is this World War II timeline. This is, again, an amazing thing that we found in the course of the curriculum project. One of our people in our review committee actually shared this. And I will just bring this up real quickly. Again, this is an amazing resource, interactive timeline. You can kind of click through the years. It gives you kind of brief summaries that you can see here with videos. Again, just an amazing, amazing resource. So definitely take a look at that. And then we also link to the National World War II Museum. They have a lot of good materials and some really interesting PD opportunities. I'll be talking a little bit more about this lesson idea on Battle of the Bulge here shortly. So we'll come back to that. One that we're not going to spend much time on today during the course of our webinar, though, is this right here, the accounts of the Navajo Code Talkers. So I know that this is a topic that's usually pretty interesting for students. So we did this lesson idea featuring some of the oral histories that are available through the Veterans History Project. So you can actually hear the words or read the words of some of the people who were actually Navajo Code Talkers themselves and about their experience. And then again, with some other great links and some things that you can use there. On our final page here, there are some really great resources. And again, reminders of, always want to check out the blog articles. So a couple of these were actually, the sources came from blog posts that the library does. So there's one here, again, an oral history. It is one of the great things about the Veterans History Project is there are so many great World War II oral histories that are included in that project. And so you have this one, including another one here with a Jewish American soldier and his experience as a POW that's linked in here from that one, as well as a couple of other special feature links here that are very helpful for you. There is one here on the Battle of Stalingrad. So definitely check out this post if that's something that you teach for world history. This would be of interest. And then something that I found really interesting, there is a fairly new collection that's digitized from the Library of Congress that is the Rumor Project, which I had never really heard of before I found this collection, but it was run out of the Office of War Information. And they really were monitoring kind of rumors that were going around the country because misinformation, is a tool of, that can be used during war times. And so this is a really very cool diagram that again shows why they were so concerned about rumors and misinformation and how it could be used as a weapon. And so this, again, is just a fascinating source that definitely has implications that you could have students think about, again, how information is shared today, the role of misinformation in today's world, and how social media and new technologies play a role in that. So again, I think there's some really cool things that you could do with this. And again, that collection in general is just really fascinating. So as you can see, again, the library has some really amazing World War II materials. And so we're very excited to be able to share with you some of those things here today. But one of the things I guess that we're most excited about is being able to share with you guys finally today for the first time our World War II Homefront in Tennessee curriculum project. And so I'm going to turn things over to Colby, who's going to share with us some of that. And of course, we'll also be posting the link for that curriculum for you to be able to download that. So Colby.
Help if I unmute myself. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me and for joining us this afternoon. And thanks to Kira for all of your incredible work and guidance on this project. We are so excited. Like she said, this just launched today. We just made it available on our website. And so there is the digital version, and I'm going to highlight some things in there and kind of scroll through some stuff. And I've marked page numbers, so I'm hoping I won't make you too dizzy trying to look through it. But it's available for download, and then we'll have printed versions shortly. So I'm going to share my screen and try to get us on this website. Let's see. Okay. Can y'all see the front of the curriculum? Okay. All right. So again, I won't scroll through all of this. There's 4 units, and I don't want to make you dizzy, but just a little bit about the process of how this all started and what's in it. We wanted to do a curriculum that would be supplementary. We know that even though TPS hasn't done a whole lot of World War II related lesson plans and things, workshops, there's a ton of World War II information out there. And so knowing that, and knowing that, folks have put in a lot of work for all of that stuff, and teachers have readily available sources for World War II topics, we wanted to make something that was hyper local, that was specific to our state, that told local stories and highlighted Tennesseans and how their involvement in the war changed the war and the outcomes for our country in the 30s and the 40s. And so what we did was take primary sources from the library, obviously, and so it's heavily dependent on those sources, but we also paired them with things that we found from local archives, stories from local historians, museums, the State Museum, obviously TSLA, things that were important for Tennesseans to know about how people in our state contributed. And so with that, we divided the curriculum into 4 units. And so I'm going to show you first right here, and I'm going to try not to scroll like that because I know that's making me busy. There is a timeline. Kira mentioned the American Battlefield Monuments Commission that she clicked on already. If we have time, I'll go back at the end and talk a little bit more about the features of that timeline. But if you want a really in-depth one, that one's the fantastic one to go to. So something to note about this curriculum, we didn't reinvent the wheel on any of this. It's all meant to be added to what's already there. And so with that in mind, and knowing that teachers have a really limited amount of time to teach these topics in their classroom, most of the activities that are here are very short, but they could be long if you wanted them to. So if you're teaching a college survey class, there are resources that you could dive deep into. There's books, there's journal articles and academic sources. There's also links to other museums and lesson plans that they have, other archives and lessons that they've created. And so there's kind of, if you're interested in a topic, we wanted it to be kind of a one-stop shop where you could find additional resources, but also have a short, succinct way to connect that larger national and international World War II topic with something local, something that your kids would hopefully be more apt to connect with. Because as teachers, obviously it's easy to talk about World War II as something that happened over there and a long time ago. But after reading through this, hopefully you, and if you choose to use some of this in your classroom, your students will understand that it happened right here in our backyards. And so with that in mind, there's 4 units. They're color coded, and I'll scroll a little bit so y'all can see. The first one is that yellow, and it's New Deal programs during World War II. This timeline I really like because the left-hand side of it is a timeline of big events that happened during World War II and in our state. And then the right-hand side of it is where we think the activities that we created would fit well within that curriculum. And so New Deal kind of comes first. You see that. And then Tennesseans at War, Tennesseans at Home, and kind of post-war changes. Those are all sort of intermixed in the timeline there. But we wanted to create it like this so that if you're teaching D-Day, for instance, you can click on the Camp Tyson and barrage balloons lesson plan and have an instant Tennessee connection. And so even if you don't have time to teach the whole lesson that we have there, and some of them are shorter than others, obviously, even just a mention of how D-Day is connected to Camp Tyson in Tennessee can help your students connect. And so that was our goal. So I know when I was teaching, it seemed like I had, you know, a ridiculous amount of time with this class, and then like a testing schedule or a pep rally or something like that would occur, and I would have, you know, no time with one class and a bunch with the others. And so we just wanted to provide something that teachers could kind of go back to and have in their back pocket. But again, even if you're not doing the whole lesson plan, just knowing that this stuff is out there, you can snag pictures from it because they're all linked in from where we got them, which is a plethora of different places, or just the stories to teachers know about this or maybe don't know about this, but certainly don't have the time to go back through and connect it all and make lesson plans out of it. So just kind of making teachers aware of these connections so that they can pass them on to their students, whether that is, you know, a brief mention in a lecture or, you know, something like that. We just wanted to have it out there. So that is the timeline. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. There's also a table of contents. So within these 4 units, each one of them has a historical overview. And so that is a 4 or 5 page essay. And it basically lays out kind of the framework for the lessons that are included, but it provides a, like it says, a historical overview for what was going on stateside in Tennessee during that time. So there's a lot of details. All that information has footnotes, and so if you're really interested, you can go and look at the books or the Tennessee Encyclopedia or wherever and kind of use it as a jumping off point for yourself, or if you have students who are more interested or have more time. Also, within each of these units, there are additional resources, which I'll scroll down and show you in just a second, but a little bit about the table of content. So all that you see there are the actual individual activities. And so I'm going to scroll to the first unit. This is the first one. And so each of the 4 units will start like this with a little blurb. And then you can see what state standards are covered in these units. We tried to make them user-friendly for teachers, obviously. You'll note that the historical overviews are pretty short and sweet, but they are meaty. So if you could use them for your students, maybe scaffold them a bit if you have younger students. But there are the additional resources here at the bottom. Okay, so now I want to show y'all a little bit of, I'll highlight some of these, couple of the whoops, that's not where I wanted it to go. I'm going to highlight a couple of the different activities. And so I won't run you through the whole activity, but just kind of show you sorts of things that we have here. And Kira, can you tell me how much time I have left? Because I didn't look at this clock before I started, and I don't want to take up your time.
Yeah, you have 15 minutes, so you're good.
15?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so the first one that I wanted to show you guys, and again, we won't roll through the whole thing, but I just wanted to kind of show you the variety, the types of activities that are included here. So there's a lot of primary source analysis, obviously. There's a lot of newspapers, there's a lot of photographs, but something that's different, we tried to include things that would be helpful for teachers if they were looking at videos, and this is an example of that. So this is on the Library of Congress's website. They have the Memphis Belle, which was a documentary about a Boeing B-17. It was used in the European theater, and it is named the Memphis Belle after the girlfriend of the captain who was in that crew. And so it's all linked in there to see which, oh, sorry, I've got stuff popping up on my computer. It's all linked in there to show you kind of where to go, and has additional resources if you want to learn more about the Memphis Belle. But then scrolling down here, this right here is just a teacher's discussion guide. So as a teacher, you could look at this. It's 40 minutes long, but you could look at it and say, I don't have 40 minutes, I have 5 minutes. You can see kind of by the minute what's going on. And so if you just wanted to show a clip of it, and then there's questions that are embedded there for you. So again, we just try to make this as user-friendly for teachers as we could, knowing that time is something that teachers do not have a lot of and don't want to take for granted. All right, let's see. I'm going to show you another one. This is, all right. So this is in our Tennesseans at Home unit. That's our second unit, and it deals with all of the economic changes, the factory work. Obviously, you see a Rosie the Riveter there, but just things that were happening stateside that were supportive of the war effort, but didn't necessarily involve the military. And so this one is another Library of Congress source, but Vultee Aircraft in Nashville built a ton of planes. They employed about 3,000 workers in 1945, and they were building dive bombers and observation planes. So a lot of women obviously worked at that factory building those planes. And if your students have seen Rosie the Riveter pictures, maybe they don't know that Rosie the Riveter was right here in Nashville. And so you can see these are readily printed for teachers. You can just download them. The links actually go back to where you can find them on the Library of Congress's website. So if you want to do that, but they're in the curriculum already. This stuff is ready to take to the copy machine. It's going to be spiral bound, and you can take it and just copy it. But you can see the photographs here. So after the photographs, the last page of this particular lesson plan is an analysis sheet. And so we thought hopefully of everything. We've got a place for your names, which I know if you have 10 students, it doesn't matter where they put their name, but if you've got like 150 of them, it really matters that they all put their name in the same spot. It's just easier to grade that way. So this activity asks students, after they're looking at those pictures, to create a job advertisement. So they're basically creating a poster, and it asks them to think about their target audience and how to list all the information that you would have on a normal job ad, like who do you contact and where do you go, and when does this job begin, and what are you supposed to do, and how do you make it eye-catching. And so all this stuff is readily available there, so students could use that as like their draft, and then they could get a nice piece of paper after they were done with this draft, but it's, again, all ready for the copy machine. All right, I'll show you one more. Let's see here. Oh, this is the very next one. This one is a newspaper lesson plan, and I worked with the historian for the Girl Scouts of Middle Tennessee, and she actually sent me Xerox copies of these newspapers. And so these are not a Library of Congress resource, but you can find them if you have a newspapers.com login, but they're here. But this chart goes with each of the newspapers that you could post them around the room. They walk around, they take their chart, and they answer questions about the captions and the date and what's discussed in the text. Again, it's all here. And then the bottom, I'm sorry, this is the wrong direction, but the bottom asks them to write a paragraph and kind of reflect on all that. But there's transcriptions, and so the actual document. The Xerox copy document is there, but also an easier to read version, and that's on all of these. And so there's 6 of them. And so again, you could have students look at all of them. You could have students do it in groups and look at one, but this is just a way to see kind of like, a lot of times when we're talking about the war, or any war, we focus on the soldier's experience and the political experience, and we kind of forget about how particularly World War II dominated life for all Tennesseans. There was nobody that the war didn't affect. And so a 5th grader looking at this and seeing what Girl Scouts in the 40s did and how that changed what their daily life looked like, that can be really powerful. And so we've got that one. Let's see what else. I'll show you guys this one. Let's see. Well, that's not where I was planning to go, but we'll go there anyway. Okay, so this one is a geography activity. It asks students to map out some of the sites that were World War II related. This is powerful just because it's visual. I mean, a lot of people, adults included, don't realize just how involved the state and the landscape changed because of the war. So 21 counties in Middle Tennessee had troops coming through as part of the Tennessee maneuvers. There were over 800,000 troops that came to train. Patton's Army trained here, and they did that because Middle Tennessee's topography looked a lot like what you would see in Central Europe. And so not just the maneuvers, though, you also had airfields and different POW camps and munitions plants, and just it spanned the entire state. And so this takes an archaeological survey that was done in 2007 and asks students to choose one of these and learn a bit more about it, but also to label it, label those on the map so that they can really grasp the whole thing. And again, that could be scaffolded for younger kids. That could be an add-on assignment for older students. It could just be, you know, you using that map and putting dots and showing that on a PowerPoint. And it could be, you know, a 30-second thing, but just to see that and see, you know, the impact of the war on the state. So again, this is sort of a choose your own adventure curriculum, and hopefully you'll find something that is helpful to you in here. Okay, so one of my favorites, and I hope this is the right number because well, it's not. I'm going to scroll all the way down and see if I can find it. Yes, here we go. All right, sorry for the scroll. All right, this is one of my favorite lesson plans. I worked with the former, one of the former curators at the State Museum here in Nashville on this lesson because the primary sources for this lesson are not digitized yet, so they're not, you can't find them on their website yet, but they digitized them for us specifically to use for this project, and so really grateful for that. Kira put a PowerPoint that goes with this up on the website, so when you snag this lesson plan, you can also download the PowerPoint that goes with it, and then you can change it and do whatever you like with it. But you see there's just on all of these, the same format for these lesson plans is to have state standards and then directions for teachers, and then it goes on into the actual handouts and things like that. But this one looks a little bit different just because of the script and the PowerPoint. But it talks about Private Monty Sharp. So his name was Floyd Montgomery Sharp, and he was a junior in high school at Rural High School in Knoxville. So that school's closed now, but he was drafted into the military his junior year summer. And so he ends up fighting at Okinawa and doesn't make it home. And his family donates his gear, like his high school regalia stuff, his Letterman jacket, his helmet. They donate all of that along with letters and telegrams to the State Museum. And so I just love this one because it is the epitome of local history. We have so many kind of big named people that we study in history classes, but you might not ever come across Floyd Sharp. But for a high school junior who's sitting in a U.S. history class, this could be a really powerful link. And so what we did, took all of these primary sources that had been digitized by the museum, made a PowerPoint of them, and then what you're looking at there is the discussion, the class discussion. And so hopefully that will lead to some more involvement and interest from your students. But it basically, this draft just, or this discussion prompts, just tell his story, and they talk about Okinawa. And so again, you know, perhaps you don't have half a day to spend on Floyd Sharp's story, but if you could use it as a segue to talk about the Battle of Okinawa, or as an introduction to talk about the war in the Pacific and how that affected people who were just like, you know, the people who were sitting in your classroom, that's what we're after here. And so, yeah, I will jump back and let Kira jump back in here, and then at the end, talk to you guys a little bit more about some of the individual resources that I found that were pretty interesting as we made these. But if you guys have any questions or things like that, just shoot us up in the chat room there. So thank y'all.
Thank you, Colby. And I dropped the link for the larger curriculum in the chat box earlier. We'll do that again. And of course, you can also find them posted on the Padlet too. So know that information is there. So we're going to switch back and think a little bit more about some of the stuff that's actually in one of the other things that is in our newsletter, and that is the Battle of the Bulge activity. So let me pull up my screen share here. So this one, and I feel like I need to mark this date in the calendar, because talking about battles and troop movements is so not what I typically do. And this is actually, I didn't write this one. This is actually one that Stacy did, but I thought it was a really cool lesson idea, and she found a really cool resource I wanted to be able to share with you guys today. So again, I'm going to try to talk about troop movements for a second, so just bear with me. Again, because I'm not someone who usually gets into the history of battles, I actually had to start with like, I need to know a little bit more about what the Battle of the Bulge was and why it's important. And so actually on the Padlet, found this short little video on YouTube that, again, I thought would work particularly well for students. It's about 3 or 4 minutes. It's animated, but again, it gets at the high points of, again, why is this battle significant? You know, and it gives you enough context to really be able then to dig into the maps and be able to make some sense of what's going on. And so again, that's another just kind of cool resource that I found. I love looking at YouTube for kind of those little short intro videos sometimes, because there's some really good ones out there that can, again, a way to get your kids into the content and give them a little background that's maybe more interesting than their textbooks. So this lesson idea really hinges on a collection of maps from the World War II military situation maps collection. So this, you know, is a really kind of very specific, again, map collections the library has. And again, something you've probably heard us mention before, you always want to see what they have for articles and essays in these collections. They have this interactive timeline for the Battle of the Bulge. And that is really the anchor piece for this lesson idea, is actually using this timeline. You'll see there's an interactive version as well as a printable one. So again, depending on what format you may be wanting to use with your students, if they were one-to-one, the interactive would be better. If you want to actually have hard copies, they have that printable version. So with these, of course, let's see, we'll open up the timeline here, the interactive version. You see it gives you kind of a little overview of the battle, and then kind of again takes you day by day, and that's really what these are. It takes you day by day through the battle, and so you can see where the troops are at and kind of where the front line of the battle is. And again, of course, the whole reason that it's called the Battle of the Bulge is because of how the front line moves, by how the battle line moves throughout the course of the overall battle. So you have, again, the peaks there that you can look at and kind of walk you through day by day. But the thing that Stacy did here that I think will be particularly helpful for students is she created a student packet. So again, if you wanted to print these out, you could, if you wanted to have students to be able to open these on their devices. She actually pulled out and created this kind of PDF version of that interactive timeline. So, you start with looking at this, this first map. And again, so you've got the little blurb there. So again, it gives you some sense of, why, again, what's going on here. And of course, the whole reason that this battle takes place is this is, Hitler is really in not quite a last-ditch effort, but in sort of a little bit of a Hail Mary move, decides to attack at this point because he feels like that this is not a very well defended part of the Allied line. This is shortly, of course, after D-Day. And so, the Allied forces are really kind of making their way towards, they've already freed Paris and are making their way towards the the border. So, being able to attack here, one, the Allies didn't think that he would because the topography here and the terrain really wasn't conducive for a very great place for a battle. But he, again, thinks he's going to surprise folks. So the first map here, you can kind of see, you have students look at it wanting to first identify, of course, what it is that they're looking at within the map. So, of course, wanting to note that these over here are our Allied troops. So we can see up here, of course, there's more that we note here in this area. And then we get down here and we see that, of course, there's not anywhere near as many Allied troops on this side of the line. And of course, this is kind of the front. And of course, the German troops are the ones stationed over here. You might also ask them, how many German troops do we see, forces compared to the Allied forces that we see. And again, especially noting kind of this region right here. So kind of again, starting with this as your kind of starting point for the battle. Of course, one of the things that's interesting is, of course, the Allies did not know that the Germans were amassing troops in this region. And so we're really kind of caught off guard in the initial days of the battle. So again, we get the kind of what's going on here for the next day. And as you scroll through these maps day by day, you kind of again see what's going on. And you see how the front is changing. And so again, we begin to see, again, that bulge. And so this is one, again, I think having the maps, if you could print them out and have them kind of laid out side by side, so students can really kind of compare them next to each other so they really can get a sense of, again, how that line is moving. You might also, as we get in here, want to pay particular attention to the 101st Airborne. And of course, that is one for many of our students in Tennessee are going to be very familiar with the 101st Airborne, may even have family members who have served in the 101st at some point in time. So they'd want to find them. And of course, they are actually right here. So as we go forward, and again, we see again, where that line is kind of again bulging out, where the German forces are gaining ground. And as the days progress, we will see what is happening with that line. So here again, here's the 101st. We see they've actually, the Germans have made their way this direction and well into what had been Allied territory. And so as the days go on, we're going to see actually that the 101st really almost get overrun to the point. So again, here they are. We see them beginning to be surrounded on two sides. And then by this day, we see that they are actually surrounded. And so they are kind of holding down this one little area and have completely been surrounded by German forces. And again, of course, we see that the Germans have made quite a bit of territorial gain up here, even to the north. And again, we begin to really see that bulge there. The other thing you might want to note, and the little preview piece might get into this, is of course the time of year. It's December, it's cold, snowy. It is not ideal situation for a battle. The resources at the time for the Allies. They were really kind of stretching their supply lines very thin, and so many of them really did not have the equipment and resources that they needed for a battle, and especially a battle that was happening when it was very cold and snowy. And so that's something else that you can kind of get into. So again, we see again how that line is moving. We see again here that we see Allied troops that have come in and are actually able to begin to help out the 101st there. And then we begin to see the Allies sort of begin to push back. The other thing to note here that pops up is you begin to note that within the German forces, there begins being listed troops and divisions that are unlocated. So that's a conversation. Why were they unlocated? What was going on? And of course, one of the things that is of note about this battle, it is one of the bloodiest battles in World War II, both for the Allied forces as well as for the German forces. And so that is something else to bring up and talk about. So again, we begin to see again that pushback of the line as time goes on. And again, you'll see that bulge again get smaller and smaller as Allied forces begin to push back. And we see again that concentration of where are the Allied troops versus the German. And again, also again, here's that listing of out of contact. So again, these are German troops that they are listing as out of contact. So they don't know where they're at, or if those divisions have just been decimated because of loss of life. So again, that's the student packet. And again, I think that these maps are a really interesting teaching tool that you can get into and talk about, again, the Battle of the Bulge, that maybe will make it more interesting than, again, just reading about a battle. Because again, as someone who is rarely ever interested in learning about battle history, I thought those maps were very, very, a very good resource. They really did kind of bring home, again, why is it called the Battle of the Bulge? And again, looking at, where the troops are at, and again, focusing on the 101st and what's going on with them there. They have a very, key point and key role in that battle with where they were stationed and what was happening throughout, especially as they were kind of again surrounded, and then are eventually, the Allies are able to kind of push them back and be able to get back where the Germans are on the other side. So again, hopefully that will give you kind of another resource that you can use in teaching some, again, the larger, more significant battles of World War II. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Colby to share with us some of the other resources that are available that maybe we haven't mentioned already.
Perfect. All right. I love this part because, like I said before, with this curriculum, we did not reinvent the wheel at all. If we found something great that somebody else made, we just added it into the additional resource section here. So I'm going to type in the right page number there. All right. So after that historical overview and introduction for each unit, it lists the activities there for you and kind of describes them. But then this additional resource section, there's one for each. There's one for each unit, and so I just want to really briefly kind of highlight a few of those that are my favorites. So for this New Deal one, some of you might be aware of it, but there is a website called The Living New Deal. I just realized that I didn't share my screen, so y'all can't see what I'm doing. Hang on just a second. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. So here is the additional resources section, and we're just in that first unit, the New Deal unit. So the Living New Deal is actually, I think the first activity is about the Living New Deal website. And so on this, it's a website that has, there's over 100, I think, New Deal projects that are mapped just in Tennessee. And so this is nationwide, but these folks have, 17,000 sites. And so you can search this website, though, by date. You can search it by New Deal program. You can search it by state. And so if you look on here, and this is all linked in the curriculum, so I won't bore you by going through it all, but it's just really cool the way that they have organized things and kind of given a description. They've tried to put photographs of everything that was done here. And so this is just another one of those visual things where you know that the New Deal affected Tennessee, but when you see it like that and see the giant list of things that were done, it's powerful. So Live a New Deal is a really cool one. Another one, which I bet you guys already know about, the Tennessee Encyclopedia. This was done, first published in 1998, and there's over 1,500 entries that have been written by historians and professionals, so they're all vetted and good information. We use encyclopedia a lot in the curriculum to provide extra information, so it's just an easy spot to go to without going to Wikipedia. This is Tennessee specific stuff, so that's always a good one. Kira already mentioned the World War II timeline, so I won't spend a ton of time. I'm going to scroll back up. I won't spend a ton of time looking at this, but I did want to show you that when you go to it, you can make this look like a map, or you can make it look like a list. And so just FYI, there's a Tennessee connection here. If you click on 1942, the Manhattan Project pops up. And so that's a fun Tennessee connection there. But this website is really great. It's got photographs, a lot of little videos that are like 1-minute clips. They're great when you're talking and, need a breather and for your students to kind of change gears a little bit. So that's really great. One of my favorite things that I found is the Ghost Army Legacy Project. So the Ghost Army, if you are not familiar with that, was the unit that they were all over Europe, but they were really important during D-Day to create fakery, as they called it, to try to lure the Germans into areas where the U.S. troops were no longer. And so they had blow up tanks, blow up Jeeps. They used trucks and Jeeps to make what looked like, from an aerial view, so the Germans are doing surveillance, to what looked like the U.S. troops were camping out and really kind of getting ready for battle in this area. In actuality, the U.S. troops had already left. Kira mentioned the Rumor Project. Is that what it's called? Rumor Project that the Library of Congress has right now. And we were talking earlier this week about how that reminded us of this Ghost Army, because part of what the Ghost Army did was create false information. So not just visual false information that could be seen from an aerial view, but also fake radio signals, fake messages that went out. Part of what these folks did was go to local pubs in these towns in Europe and order a pint and talk loose. And so there's a PBS documentary that was created by Rick Beyer, who also wrote a book called The Ghost Army. So shameless plug for that. It's a really great resource. They have actual veterans that are talking about their experience with the Ghost Army. So again, that's in the curriculum when it talks about Camp Tyson and, Camp Forest, because that is where the Ghost Army was originally formed. And so that's a cool Tennessee connection also. But love that one. Okay, so the Gore Center, Albert Gore Research Center, this is the archive at MTSU. They have a ton of resources. Kira showed you a postcard from there a little bit ago. I just wanted to show you this because it is ready-made analysis for students. And so this is a whole packet. You can see there's 34 pages here, where the archivists there at the Gore Center have made worksheets that go along with photographs and, I'll scroll down, and different documents that they have in their archive there in Murfreesboro. And so each of these, the worksheet comes before the primary sources, but there's a set of primary sources that go with each worksheet. And so they've highlighted, I think, I haven't looked this in a little bit, but I think there's 5 women that they talk about, and so they're numbered, but you could split this up in your classes, a really cool thing that's already created. All right, one more thing. So the barrage balloons that were used at D-Day and elsewhere, they were created and repaired, and folks learned how to fly them at Camp Tyson. That was the only place in the United States that did that. And so if you were in a unit that had anything to do with the barrage balloons, you were in Tennessee to train during World War II. The 320th, that was the only, the only all-Black battalion that was at D-Day. So they trained at Camp Tyson. But there's a fantastic book called Forgotten. It's linked in the curriculum. But on the website for this book, there's also a really cool 3-minute, it's a trailer for the book, but it's really fantastic. It has a lot of primary sources and photographs and things like that, with folks talking about the 320th. So if you need a cool 5-minute snippet on the 320th, that's a really great resource. And yeah, so the rest of the stuff is linked within the curriculum, so please do take a look at that. But I don't know, Kira, do you want me to talk about the videos that we're making, or do you want to share about that?
If you want to take just a second to talk about those, and we'll be, of course, sharing more about those here in the coming weeks.
Awesome. Okay, so in addition to the print version and the digital version of this curriculum, we are also creating short videos where experts on different topics talk about World War II or Tennessee or Tennesseans, how that played out. And so we are going through our list of folks who are interested in or who have studied about these different topics, but they'll all be related to the home front in Tennessee. And so those will be part of the curriculum kind of tab on the TPS website shortly. So they'll be on YouTube for everybody, but they're shaken out to be about 5 minutes each. And so they're really great for classroom use, but it's just a different opinion and a different voice for teachers to share with their students, or for just folks to listen to and get a really brief rundown of a particular topic. And so, yeah, we're working on those. So if you are, if you know somebody who would like to be a part of that, give us a shout, and be on the lookout for those, and hopefully you'll find some that are valuable to you to use in your class. But that's all I've got. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Colby. So as she mentioned, of course, that we are unveiling the curriculum today, and we're going to be, of course, adding and featuring some other new resources in the weeks to come. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And in fact, one of the things we have coming up is our first workshop, full day workshop for the curriculum, which will be on Thursday, September the 22nd at Norris Dam State Park. We do still have some open spots for that workshop. So if you're interested in joining us for that day, let me know. We'll be happy to get you added. We're going to have one of the park rangers there join us that day to talk to us about the CCC and, of course, their role there. And we're going to end the day actually with a little history hike to one of the CCC camps there at the park. It's going to be a fairly short hike, so it's nothing super strenuous, but a chance to actually get to go and see one of these sites. And of course, the CCC is really important, not just for their work during the New Deal period, but again, laying that foundation for Tennesseans to really be ready to go to war once the U.S. Actually officially entered into World War II. So a couple things as we wrap up. again, just a mention again, do check out that Padlet where we have all of those resources. And of course, if you are interested in getting PD credit for participating in today's webinar or watching this recording, be sure to click on or use the QR code here to access the survey, or use this web address. For those of you who are joining us live, we'll drop that in the chat here in just a moment. So again, if you are filling that out, I usually look at those and generate those certificates about once a week. So give me about a week. If you haven't gotten it by then, you might want to check with me and make sure there hasn't been an issue with us actually getting your survey in. And so again, want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope that you will join us next month. Our topic for the October Digging In session will be world religions. So again, that will be on the second Thursday of October. So just let me know if you would like to register. For those of you who are joining us live, if you will stay on. And otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining us and for watching this month's Digging In.